Welcome back, my Pontiac High School people. This is Political Parties Develop. Let's see how it happens. By the end of Washington's presidency, his two top advisors, a couple people that we've talked about, had resigned because they basically hated each other and they disagreed politically so much. Here we're talking about Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. And they had resigned in order to gather like-minded people around them and create the nation's first political parties. George Washington was not a member of a political party, but every other president afterward will be. Hamilton created a political party called the Federalists. The Federalists believe in a strong federal government, a strong central government. They believed that when you looked at the Constitution, if the Constitution did not forbid the government from doing something, that is, it didn't say government can't do this, then they could do it. This is a very loose interpretation of the American Constitution. Now, Jefferson created a different group called the Democratic Republicans. They wanted a weak central government. They believed that power should remain with the states, that states should really pretty much do their own thing and only use the federal government when they need the federal government. They believe that government is only allowed to do those things listed in the Constitution. It seems like a subtle difference, but really it's very huge. The idea that the Constitution exists to give a specific list of things that you're allowed to do versus the idea that the Constitution gives a specific list of things that you're not allowed to do. And otherwise, you can do whatever you want. Worlds difference between these two views. Now, Federalists, again, wanted that loose construction. That's what we call it, a loose construction of the Constitution. And it really does allow the federal government to increase its power. Federalists wanted the federal government to be stronger. They also supported business and trade, and they wanted the growth of cities. They believed the future of the nation was in having large, populous cities that traded with other nations and had large, wealthy businesses. The Federalist Party also favored a close relationship with Great Britain and saw the kind of industrial society that Great Britain had created, that was the future of America. Now, the Democratic Republicans followed that strict construction, the idea that the government can only do those things that the Constitution specifically says they can do. They wanted to keep most of the power, most of the things that happen, would be in the control of the states. They believed this because they believed that the states could better look after the interests of the average person, that the federal government in Washington, D.C. wouldn't know how to take care of a Georgia farmer, but a government in Georgia would. So it made more sense to them that the government in Georgia would have more impact on that individual's life. They believe the United States should avoid the problems of big cities, that large cities just lead to disease and poverty and problems. We should instead be an agricultural nation. They said, look at all this land we've got. We've got wide open spaces. Let's plant things, grow things. Let's feed the world. That's what the United States should be. And they also believed that a close relationship with Britain was harmful. They said, our ties with Britain have been too deep for too long. They will always see us as inferior. We have a better shot of having a good partnership with France. So those are the views of Hamilton and Jefferson that became political party views. And after Washington decides not to seek a third term, after George Washington decides he doesn't need to be president anymore, tensions between these parties really increase because one of them is going to get to pick the next president. One of them is going to guide the direction of the United States while the United States is still young, have tremendous influence over what we did. The second president of the United States could do a lot more to direct the nation than, say, our 45th president. So in order to get the public on their side, they used newspapers to promote their ideas. Americans were a very literate society. People loved to read their newspapers back then. Newspapers are kind of dying today, but we used to read in this country. And people would read these political ideas and would read, partisan news, supporting one position and attacking the other. And we had two newspapers in particular that I want to focus on here, because we had the Gazette of the United States, which was a major newspaper that was a Federalist paper. And we had the National Gazette, which wrote and published for Democratic Republicans. And both Hamilton and Jefferson wrote a lot. And they published both under their name and under made-up names. And they both lied and lied and lied to the American people. Oh my gosh, Donald Trump could take a lesson from how much Hamilton and Jefferson lied about their political opponents, because he ain't nothing on what they got. The lies were ridiculous at the time, but that was how politics ran then. Now, by 1796, both political parties wanted to win Congress and the presidency. They wanted to control both of them, with the belief that if you controlled both, you could really direct the nation. Federalists viewed themselves as the rightful followers of George Washington. Keep in mind, George Washington was not a Federalist, but he did side with Hamilton much more than he sided with Jefferson. If he had been a party man, he would have been more of a Federalist than a Democratic Republican. But, again, he wasn't a party man. The Democratic Republicans considered themselves the party of the common man. We're the party that most people should follow because we look after the most interests of the people. Most Americans are farmers. We're the party of farmers. We're going to take care of you. And that is how they campaigned. The Federalists supported John Adams for president. They wanted him to be president. And Thomas Pinckney, this man right here, to be vice president. We talked about the Pinckney Treaty a couple of lessons ago. That was his brother, Charles Pinckney, who negotiated that. The two brothers, the Pinckney brothers, were both political Federalists. The Democratic Republicans hoped that Thomas Jefferson would become president, and that another man, an anti-Federalist, Aaron Burr, would become vice president. The Anti-Federalists are kind of a dying political party, but they're more aligned with the Democratic Republicans than anybody else, and Aaron Burr is a well-known political figure. When the election results roll in, we have a system that called at the time for the first place finisher to be president, but if you finish in second place, you became vice president. We don't do this now. Now you run on a ticket. You vote for Adams and Pinckney, and it's a single vote that goes for both. Well, it's not technically that, but when we vote, that's what it is. You vote for an Adams and Pinckney ticket. It wasn't done that way. There was just one vote within the Electoral College. They vote for one person. Adams beats out Pinckney, but Pinckney doesn't beat out Jefferson. Jefferson comes in second. So we wind up with President John Adams, a Federalist, and Vice President Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican. So we have a president and a vice president who disagree on politics. Now, prior to this time, these men had been close friends. They wrote the Declaration of Independence together. They served in France, trying to help France join the United States in the Revolutionary War. These were nice friends, but political enemies. And these 8 years really shatter their these 4 years really shatter their friendship, because John Adams will be president for one term, 4 years, before Jefferson wins the next election. They disagreed on a lot of important issues, and it was really a case where the president and vice president just didn't get along. All right, so that is a creation of political parties in American history, kind of important for government and politics today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you learned something. Farewell.